It's interesting that you said that it's so blatant, so open, so pure, so honest about its intention, right? To keep this country white, because people oftentimes think that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and others represent some new phase of white supremacy. It's always been this way, Professor Hing. And what's always frustrated me, and we've talked about this before, is that Democrats who have a multiracial base, whose base, many would say, are Black people, has always punted on immigration reform and always punts and throws immigrants under the bus to court what me and Danielle oftentimes say is this mythical Rust Belt white voter who drinks real coffee in a real diner, right? And we're seeing this at play as we're recording this right now. And to the chagrin and disappointment of many progressives and Democrats, President Biden and his administration and many Democrats are considering what they say are sweeping restrictions on migration in exchange for aid to Ukraine and Israel. Can you unpack this for our listeners about what they're proposing and what's your take on it?
How many times have I said this, that I'm so disappointed in the Biden administration on so many levels, most particular immigration. And I will come back to your question because I'm having this debate with my closest friends who don't want to vote in next year's election. They just don't want to vote. They can't bring themselves to vote for either person. But the problem is their vote would have gone to Biden, I assume, right? But they just won't vote. And I keep on reminding them, but what about judicial appointments? What about other policies other than immigration? You don't want Trump to be. Anyway, it is insane that it wasn't just Biden being strong-armed by the Republicans in the Senate to put immigration on the table over the negotiations over aid to Ukraine and Israel. Biden himself actually was willing to put that on the table. He has willingly put it on the table.
So they didn't have to strong-arm him?
Oh, no. I know people who work in the White House, and the White House is enigmatic. To his credit, he does have people that are good and bad on immigration. And from day to day, they have battles in the White House. But the good guys, if you will, they've lost this battle. But what they have told me was all along, Biden believes in the rhetoric that there is a border crisis. All along, he has bought the rhetoric that there's a border problem. And my argument is that it's not a border problem. It's a humanitarian challenge that we can handle. But he's bought into this rhetoric that it's a problem and it's a porous border. And so he was very willing to put on the table things that Donald Trump had championed, which is, for example, that if you traveled through a third country, in other words, if you came from anywhere else from Mexico, you have to apply in that third country. He's willing to buy into this rhetoric that, okay, to screen to be eligible for asylum. And incidentally, the clinic that I help to run, we have over 400 clients. It's really a legal aid office. It's not a law school clinic. And the folks that I represent, which are from all over the world, they're not just from Central America. They are mostly, but they're from everywhere, including Africa, including Jamaica, including China. And they're not coming for a walk in the park. They're coming out of desperation. And I'll come back to this in a minute, because we ought to be spending more of our money on helping to solve root problems, although whether the United States can help in that is another question. But the other thing he's willing to put on the table is something called expedited removal. There is a provision in the law that if you came without documents and you're caught at the border, you can be deported without a hearing before an immigration judge if it's within 2 weeks. He's willing to enable expedited removal without a hearing, without an immigration judge, nationwide. And if you have entered within the last 2 years, what's frightening about that is that he's not just talking about an executive order. He's talking about a willingness to make those permanent parts of the Immigration and Nationality Act. In other words, he's willing to have statutory change. And it's not just an executive order he's willing to do. That is the most frightening thing. For this current day moment of funding this year for those two countries, he's willing to make wholesale, permanent, statutory change that would affect the plight of future refugees to the United States. That's giving away more than the store. It's giving away our humanity. It's giving away a permanent part of what the nation should be standing for.
You know, when I have said multiple times that, you know, Trump becomes president again, and you're not just giving away the store, you're giving away every bit of your liberty, every bit of justice, every bit of opportunity, every bit of hopefulness, because they are coming to finish the hit job on our democracy, right? They set it up in 2016. They got through and tested some of the fence and the guardrails during his administration from 2017 until, January 2021, until January 6, 2021. But they get back in and they are finishing the hit job, which means not just reversing every bit of progress that has been made, right, in this country to expand opportunities, rights, access, but they are going to punish the very people that even attempted to want those things in the first place. Like that to me is really like the cherry on the white supremacist cake. It's not just that we want to get rid of your history. It's not just that we want to wipe away diversity and equity projects. It's not just that we want to do away with immigration. It's that we want to punish those people who have had any bit of success, any bit of access, any bit of rights, so that you know who's in charge and that that you will never fight again.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are several, but the two big cases that his Supreme Court controlled justices really just proves your point. They're coming after us. They came after us on the affirmative action case. They came after us with the voting rights cases. Okay. And those both, as you both know, those go to the root of any possible access to political influence in the country. And as the demographics were changing and are changing in our favor, closing off the rights to bastions of higher education, closing off access, meaningful access to voting, that's where they are going after the jugular. I agree with you. They're coming after us. It's not just some immigrants. It's people of color.
And we've talked about this often on our show. We talk about the attacks on DEI. We talk about the attacks on books written by people of color. We talk about voting rights. We talk about the attacks on immigration. But oftentimes the problem is that within the majority, the majority fails to see how this is all connected. And there's a divide and conquer technique that is very successful. Pits Black people against immigrants, Asian against Black people, LGBT against religious immigrants, and so forth. And what we always try to warn this show is, listen, step back for a second, look at the big picture. They're coming after all of us. And if you look at the polls right now, and if you look at the data, the reason why some would say that President Biden and Democrats who apparently are no longer progressive, like Senator John Fetterman, just found that out on immigration, apparently. And Israel, the man who said I'm progressive, has just said, I'm not a progressive. I'm a regular Democrat. Okay. In order to, what they believe, win over the majority and the whites, and the moderate voter. And they're looking at the polls right now. They're like, we're losing on immigration. Republicans are winning. We're getting trounced. So this is why we have to sell the immigrants out. We have to throw them under the bus. And you mentioned in your book, you have another way of looking at this, how to humanize immigrants, how to create a message where you can have immigration reform, win over people, and not throw people under the bus. Can you give us a vision, some strategy for Democrats moving forward? Because this is a perilous state that we're in right now, where Senator Fetterman is like, whose wife, by the way, was an immigrant, is saying, Nope, gonna throw her under the bus also.
Yeah. You may think that I'm being Pollyannish here. I choose to believe, and people may think I'm wrong. I choose to believe there still is a gigantic middle in this country that, with respect to immigration, for example, they don't really have strong feelings one way or the other. And if they do, and if they've met an immigrant, that's usually a positive interaction. Okay. And so this is an opportunity to me to explain who are let's get to the border. Okay. If this is what it's about, let's talk about who the folks are at the border. I would challenge any of the so-called moderate Democrats, go to the goddamn border, okay? Come with me. It's an open invitation. I go every 6 months. Come with me. Let's spend an afternoon interviewing the folks that I encounter at either on the Texas-Mexico border, the Arizona-Mexico border, or I've been to all three, okay? Come with me. Let's talk with these folks. And when you learn who they are, let's communicate to the American public. These are not people that are coming to do us harm. They're regular people who are desperate because of the violence that they have fled. I really think that would make a difference. And I want to believe that. That's true. I'm being idealistic in that sense. But I want to believe that the people in the middle have a heart, and that we've got to tap into that heart.